Good work, Informa. That is very useful insights, and we appreciate that information greatly. Next, we have a couple of sessions related to a very important new area that COVESA is looking into, and that is in the commercial vehicle space and in the fleet management space. If you were around yesterday, you heard this from Matt Jones, as well as myself this morning, that fleet management is something that relates very closely with VSS and vehicle data and so forth. And so we're going to introduce, first of all, a couple of individuals to come up and give a kind of an overview presentation of where things are going in fleet ops. And those two individuals are Magnus Liljeqvist, and he is the Global Technology Strategist at Volvo Group Trucks Technology. And also Thomas Spreckley. Thomas is with ETAS. He's a senior software engineer and very, very involved in the whole fleet ops area. And so I'll invite you two to come on up, and we'll hand it over to you. And then we will take, after they have finished their keynote, we'll invite some panelists up, and I'll introduce them at that time. So welcome, gentlemen. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
That one's for you, Magnus, to start with.
Yeah?
All right.
Do you want to say something first, or should I just dive right into it?
No, I will just quickly, we're welcoming Magnus here from Volvo Group, and in middle, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, fresh new blood, and let's hear what he has to say. Over to you, Magnus.
Which is not much, to be honest. You should always know your audience when you hold something, and I had no idea what to expect, right? So I made some slides that have little to no information in them, and then I used my Tourette's of information during the speech and see what we say. Thank you for my take first. I think it was awesome. Both some hard truths to hear about where OEMs are and where we used to be. I'm going to say that we're probably still where we used to be in many of those cases. And also, thank you for trying to... the words of SDV and OS and so on, I will misuse them all. You'll probably know what I'm trying to say, even if I use them severely incorrectly. Yeah, so Volvo Group loves COVESA. Yeah, I don't know yet. This is my second day here. But I want to show a little bit where we are, like a little bit of the pain points we see of going SDV, and a little bit where I see that COVESA might be one of the key to unlock a few things. I'll probably show a little bit more about other coalitions or engagements we are planning on as well. And this is me reaching out to you, right? We're not members. I got questions during today and yesterday. It's like, why are you here? I was like, yeah, but we're trying to engage. And I would love to take some feedback afterwards on if we're playing this ecosystem correctly, or if our view of this ecosystem is what I believe it will be. Because this will be an ecosystem, and it's an ecosystem that I believe will be vastly different from the one that I have today. But more on that later. Who are we in Volvo Group? And I know that we probably should update this picture a little bit. It has some years on it. But we do quite a lot of things. We do not do the cars anymore. So I've had that question a few times this week as well. No cars. The cars are here as well. Amazing company, not ours. I also have not seen any canoes in the factory for a long time, I must admit. Neither are sailboats, but the rest we kind of do, right? And this, not only do we have this flora of products, we also have a quite long gone strategy of what we call cost, common architecture, and shared technology. And I listened to Matt from Ford, right? And he said that they have the challenge of an F450 and a Ford Transit and how different they are. Yeah, I'm not one-upping them at all, but there is probably a bigger difference in a boat, a digger, and a truck. And my strategy, or our strategy, is for sure to reuse what I do for SDV in all of these segments and products. And that's also why I believe that VSS could be part of solving this problem for me, to kind of keep these products and data together. I do understand that it probably won't go as deep as to involve boats as well, but, you know, let's challenge it and see how far we can go. So going SDV, I will share a little bit of the pain points I have and where we are right now, and let's see if what we do here can help me, right? So there's a technical challenge in complexity, and that is one part that I will not go deeper into. There's no point in me talking to you guys about the technical complexity of going SDV. But as Volvo Group, we have gone quite far, I would say, into our SDV journey. But as Maite said, we've done it with utilizing pretty much old processes, the way we used to do it. We have an ecosystem, yes, but it's more of a, you know, different building blocks of tier ones that we integrate in as an OEM. And sadly, I mean, Volvo is a pretty big company in the commercial vehicle business, but we're not past car volumes. So taking that role as a truck maker is troublesome. And it's also for some of the tier ones. It's not big enough for the tier ones to always think that those building blocks are worth their while. And if those building blocks do not become standardized or whatever you want to call it in any way, the role of integrating this is it's troublesome, to be frank. So that's what I want to avoid. And as I said, we used to do this, or we've come as far as we have, utilizing pretty much old ways of working, old resources and competences, but we have an aircraft carrier of an organization to turn around. And joining something like COVESA, I think, is an important piece of changing both the way we work, but also the mindset in Volvo. Also, another problem I will share is what I call here the macro analysis. Super cool word. As we said, the top chart here, you can't read it, but I'm sure the slides are available somewhere. And you don't have to agree with the numbers, if it's 3x or whatever x. But I think the sentiment of it is pretty correct. The complexity of software and going software-defined is very much bigger than my increase in productivity and what I can do. So this poses a problem for us. And this one I took from a report from the European Commission. And they also have like a white paper out now that kind of states a few problems in the automotive industry that we need to change. And that's like software products are delayed, tight R&D budgets, yeah, who doesn't have that? And also difficulty finding software talent. And as I said, if we have a 3x complexity and all of the truck makers should do this on their own, and we fail on standardizing and communalizing things, there's not enough people in Europe to do this. And what the European Commission is worried about is that we're losing competitiveness in Europe. And another one I want to point out is the increased dependency on tech companies who will set de facto standards. And I will come to that business change soon, that if we are not on that track as Volvo Group, there's a business change that will probably lead to us missing out on both the position we have right now, but also the future possibilities. And there, I believe, joining COVESA is the right move for us. So the next one is then the business transition. And I want to point out first that these are my personal opinions, this slide coming here. So don't go to Volvo and say, oh, Volvo, you believe this. No, this is me. On your left-hand side, we have the position that we have right now, that we have an OEM on top, integrating Tier 1 and Tier 2 solutions. It's actually quite a nice business right now. I'm not sure you follow our stock, but we made the best Q1 report ever a few weeks ago. Interesting enough, so did Nokia and Motorola, I think, the year before the iPhone. And we kind of know how that happened, right? So what I believe is that the position of an OEM is going to be pushed down by, I don't know if you want to call it data, service, SDV, tech providers, whatever, that position up there. And the margins of an OEM is probably going to be squeezed quite a lot. And if we miss this opportunity of stepping up in the top of the right-hand triangle, I think we're in trouble. I don't really want to call out other companies here, but I'll use BYD because I don't think they are here. They are even stating that when you're buying a car from BYD, they're saying, thank you for buying a car. We have no plan on selling cars in the future. They want to take the top end of the right-hand triangle. So what do I need then, and why am I here? I need industry collaboration and standardization. I don't think I will survive without it. And I need partnerships. And partnerships is something that we do quite heavily in Volvo. We have, in the last couple of years, quite a nice amount of them, but they're mostly about products. We collaborate with someone to sell products. Not so much in the tech standards and so on, but if you look at, for instance, this one down here, Volvo Group, Daimler, and Traton, and the charging EV network that we're creating together, that needs to be done in the overlap between industry collaboration and standardization and a partnership. We need to be in that space. That is my belief. And here, and this you can challenge me all you want, do not look at the stack and say, oh, but that's not correct, because that's just a visualization of a little bit where I believe we are. And my pain points of going SDV is not necessarily up at the top, VSS. That's not where my biggest pain point is, but it's a nice addition to what I need. This is the way I believe that SDV and Eclipse and COVESA kind of interact. I think SDV Eclipse is targeting further down in the stack. I do plan to join as well, and I do think it's the right move. But to me, that's a long-term move. I think they will not pay off in the time frame that COVESA will. And I will say it. I used yesterday the analogy that I think COVESA is like an entry drug into these collaborations. It's an easy way to deliver value quite fast, and it's an easy way. It does not impact a lot of the things we do in a bad way. We don't have to adapt so much. It's just a way to collaborate, and then hopefully SDV Eclipse will deliver on the lower ends in the end. And I happily will take some feedback on this outside later to see if you believe the same thing, or if you want to point me in another direction. I'm super happy with that too. But that is what I believe we need. And by that, for some comic relief, I used this, as I said in the beginning, we're like on the outside looking into COVESA and kind of knocking on the door. And as far as I see it so far, to me, you are perfect. And I think I really would like Volvo to join. Not that I can promise that we will, because it is not my decision in the end. And I think it was Emil yesterday who said, why are not all the OEMs here? Yeah, we might not be, as I said, central or distributed in our electrical system in the future, but we're for sure are distributed in our governance bodies, and to make a decision that impacts so much, it's not an easy way for an OEM to do that. But we'll get there, and to me, I think my responsibilities goes more from VSS and inwards into the truck, and not so much outwards in the actual services we do. But the way I need to do it is probably to join to enable the next step, not to wait until the entire Volvo group feels like this is the right move, because then it's going to be too long. And by that, I will hand over this thing to Thomas, and we'll go in more into what
Thanks, Magnus.
Actual implementation of this for us.
I was just thinking something a little lighthearted to start with. Open source relationship status, it's complicated. I think that's all we need to say. So I'm here. I hope I don't dive too deep into technicals. We've obviously had discussions, and we have some sort of secret plans to create this new birds of a feather for commercial vehicles. So I wanted to get a little bit more focused, more in terms of a real use case, because a lot of the time we talk sort of very conceptual and macro level and up high. So this is a quick 15 minutes on the fleet ops blueprint. So for those who have never seen this before, the TLDR of this is we are proposing activity in the open source space and communities, an end-to-end showcase. I'll come back to that later, why we think that's so important, because you make some very interesting learnings when you have to deliver a full end-to-end stack. So as I said, utilizing not just open source technologies, projects, and standards, but also closed source standards, and interacting with the world we have today. And it's really mostly about showing feasibility. So this whole idea or this concept of a unified tech stack is sometimes a little bit blue sky. So we think, we hope you find it useful. We'll be doing a demo on day 3 in the session, the fleet ops session with AWS and Geotab. We also don't want to take ownership of it. We started this work, but the intention and the goal is for communities, both Eclipse SDV and COVESA communities, to see it and interact with it and to help guide us where we've missed pieces, where we can improve, where we've maybe got things wrong. I mean, this is technology after all, so everything is fairly changeable. Well, that's like where we'd like to get to. So in essence, for those who aren't so familiar with fleet management systems, basically it's about taking data from commercial vehicles and making that accessible and, very important here, scalable up in the cloud. So a few reasons about why standards, why SDV, and why VSS. So if we look a little bit more into the motivations behind these efforts of my colleagues, and hopefully the communities to come. As I said, the goal here is really to focus development efforts and provide alignment points, touch points with this ecosystem, emerging ecosystem, and evolving standard, and push for standardization. So it's very important to just remember this is an ecosystem in the making. We're not saying what we have done as a demo is that's the solution. It's far from, but it fills in a few pieces already today, which you can get companies, everyone, up and running very quickly. And that would not be possible without open source technologies and standards like VSS. So we will address and improve this over time, I hope. With open source, we are orienting this towards a specific automotive-related use case. So this is where we sort of narrow down a little bit further into the commercial vehicles field. My experience so far in that game is a lot of it is very business to business. It's compared to past cars, it's sometimes a little bit easier to create the business value proposition and the reasons and the motivations of why we must make it more efficient, cost less, faster to develop, and the rest of it. Finally, last but not least, this is open source as well, so we learn whilst doing. There is no better way to learn than by doing. Those that know in Eclipse SDV, it's a code-first community. Here at COVESA as well, everything you can see, it's on the repos. You can go into Wikipedia. There's regular weekly meetings, so it's a very real technical discussion beneath these sort of keynotes and slides already ongoing. And we hope to find and identify missing pieces because, as Magnus mentioned, trucks and heavy commercial vehicles, they have some niche requirements, let's say. So, and we have to basically work out how we will do that. So a quick 2 slides. I didn't want to get too technical. I hope this isn't. If it is, ask questions, please, at the end, and we try and clear things up. But the status quo, I would say today, FMS vendors and tiers, tend to build dedicated telematics units or vehicle computers where they pit these into commercial vehicles, basically with the goal or the focus to collect data and report this back to the cloud and into fleet ops or fleet management systems. So the challenge, which is actually not necessarily unique to fleet ops or fleet management systems, I would say this is more of a generic SDV challenge we see and experience. This needs to be done for each and every commercial vehicle brand, often in a FMS proprietary way. It's slow and extremely costly, and those who have ever been involved in this, I mean, it's very tedious across all the different FMS vendors, especially if you have multi-brand fleets, which in real life you often do. So scaling is very difficult, integration effort is very high, and we need to transition. I have many talks already in this AMM of we need to transition away from the integration efforts and into the real differentiating value areas, as Magnus showed with the upside-down pyramids. So a little glimpse into where we think maybe this could go. This is, again, a really architecture picture. So Sven, Eric will show sort of a more detailed tech stack on day 3 where we're at now. And please, if you have things, come and get involved and say, oh, we can help with this piece here, or we would like to work on that area. That's really the idea behind proposing this blueprint or test bed, however you want to call it. So with open standards like VSS and the SDV or the emerging SDV potential that Magnus mentioned in terms of Eclipse SDV and what's happening in Linux Foundation and AGL, using these standard APIs for accessing the data and services allows us now for employing the same hardware and software components in vehicles and across brands and also even across FMS vendors or cloud solutions or third parties. So as you see on your left here, the solution here is now we move this transition towards a software-defined vehicle coming from leveraging these open standards and the shared technologies. Now we're getting closer to running fleet software on any vehicle, and with that also simplifying hardware and actually making telematics fully software. And there are already companies here like Aiden and others, to name a few, that this is also possible in different ways to this. And that's where I see there being a lot of interesting discussions on then how we can challenge each other or work with each other and collaborate. As I mentioned, the interoperability between the cloud FMS providers is dramatically increased as well if you move towards a standard, and an industry standard, open standard more importantly. And we can focus changes on APIs and scale. And so with that, moving towards the end of this keynote now, I mean, this is not the list of every company that we would love to be working with and on this together. We have obviously Volvo Group on the stage here with me, and I hope to continue pursuing that with you. But for example, Magnus touched on this project or company called Milence, where the goal is to deploy and create the charging infrastructure, super high charging infrastructure, 1,000 kilowatts across the whole of Europe for the commercial vehicle space. And the problem is, unsurprisingly, sharing data amongst 3 absolute giants in the industry. So I think we in this room, we here in this community, we already have solutions. We already have things we could leverage and put our efforts towards, efforts such as this, that need to happen anyway. So please, this is my sort of call to join us. The goal, as I said, is to turn this sort of lightweight POC demo we have into a real blueprint for prototyping, testing, proving, all sorts of fleet ops use case. I mean, this fleet management system is one, but there's linked with that telematics, I mean, there's insurance. We also have a lovely partnership with Open Insurance. And I mean, the sky's the limit once you start to prove out in practice the different pieces. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure with you, Magnus. Thank you all for listening. And as Magnus said, please challenge us, get in touch. Day 3, as I mentioned, there is a Fleet Ops Tech session, not just by ourselves. I think AWS and Geotab are showing something as well, so that's great. And the goal and the intention isn't just to show slides here. We would really love to turn this into a birds of a feather for commercial vehicles, as Steve mentioned. And for that to succeed, we need others. So to that point, that's the end. Maybe we can take some questions now from the audience, perhaps, and then we'll invite up the panelists, where we'll continue this in a sort of slightly more informal chat session. So, is there any questions?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, as Volvo Group, we're committed to having, I think it's 50% of our revenue from services in 2030, and it's not services as in oil changes, right? I mean, for us, I think it's firstly transport as a service. I think we're slowly moving away from just selling trucks into selling transport, autonomous or not autonomous. That's one big one. And then if we can monetize on what we have in all the data in the transport industry, I think it's for the fleet operations, I think it's massive.
Yep, another question down here. We are not necessarily excluding, but exactly a good point. As I said, for rental companies, a lot of these technology pieces, these standardization efforts, they're totally relatable and should also not be done just in isolation to commercial vehicles. Does that help a bit? I mean, the goal was to focus in as well, because when you focus in, you start to get some traction, or we hope we'll start to get some traction. But yeah, please, let's talk about that. That's also, they are fleets at the end of the day.